All right, last time we finished up talking about all these notes and all the syntax of PHP, and what I want to show you today, and that'll probably be the end of Unit 2, is how to get that information from one page to another. We talked about inputs and outputs. PHP pages don't get inputs from the user, they get inputs from another page. And so the outputs here, one page indirectly, if it's a form, outputs data to another page. And I believe somebody asked me, is there a way to transfer this data from one page to another without using a form? And my answer right now is no. Unless you put it in a cookie file, unless you put it in a database, the data in a database component someplace, I would say the answer is no. So if we want to transfer data from one page to another, the way to do that is with a form. If you want to do it inconspicuously so the user doesn't know it's happening, you can do it in hidden fields in a form. Most often, though, your page will have a button on it. Your page will maybe have a link on it that's not really a link, but it will respond to a click event that submits a form. And that's how we transfer data back and forth. So what we have in our project right now is a form that includes some entries and then finally a button. Each one of the entries has an ID and each one of the entries has a name. My new naming standards, the name simply is a description of the data, like a variable name. But the ID is kind of like an object name, because this ID would be used by JavaScript to refer back to a text box, to a numeric box, to a date box, whatever. So that's the way I've been naming things, because I want this, when it gets sent to my results page, to have a nice variable name instead of some object name. So that's what I've been doing. Remember, to actually view this page, you go to localhost with Apache running, and I did start Apache before I started the recording. And here's my Unit 2 done folder, and as soon as I click on it, this page comes up because there is an index.php page. So it automatically loads that page. So here's the form. It's got some sample data in it, so I don't have to keep typing it over and over and over again. The start over button is just a reset button, so we're going to ignore that one. But here's the show total weight button. And what it will do is transfer all of these inputs to our results page. And if I click that right now, it should go, but it won't do much, except maybe display my name somewhere. I think I took a lot of that out. But here, did I copy the wrong one in again?
You ran the completed one, yeah.
Yeah, but I shouldn't have in my results page, I shouldn't have any processing yet.
You did a done file instead of...
I did done instead of Unit 2 again.
Yeah.
I'm getting good at that. Okay, so this is Unit 2 results, so I need to make sure that when I launch in my local host here, I don't choose the done file. Okay, still got the sample data. Then when I click on this, there's my Voker all as well. But what we want to do is get all this stuff in. So the first thing I want to do is simply echo all of the data that I got from the other form. And again, as a review, the way this gets communicated is because this form has a method of post. That could be get, and we might switch them around just so we can see what's happening. Has a method of post, and it sends the results to this results page. Notice the results page doesn't have a path, which means it's in the same folder as the index page. Not typical. Usually the results page is buried someplace else. But really all we're looking at here is the syntax of PHP. So I'm not too worried about what folders are they in. If this results page was in a other pages folder or whatever folder, sites folder, just put the prefix on there. Put the path on there. Right now, these two pages are in the same folder. So because we have a method, all that data should be getting to my results page. So I'm going to go to the results page, and we already put in some sample PHP from last time and even some HTML on it. And here's another little keep it in the back of your mind thing. Watch what happens when I comment. That takes out my HTML paragraph tag. But notice the PHP is all still live, so it would technically execute. So if I want to close my comment here. If I want this PHP not to function, I have to also comment it out. Don't know if you can comment out. Let's try it here real quick because I don't remember. If I comment out the PHP tag itself, then things seem to be, all this stuff is green, should all be ignored down to there. So that's a nice little shortcut for copying or commenting out the PHP. Now before I do anything else, I want to make sure that my data is actually getting to this form. Remember from my notes that there is a built-in function built into PHP called print_r. So I need a PHP tag. And inside here I can do a print_r and then in parentheses send it the array name that I want to print. In my notes, we talked about it last time, also said there are 3 different arrays that we might use. There is a super global arrays, which means that these arrays are available to all functions, to everybody, all the time, no special commands. So these are the super global variables in PHP, are closer to what we consider global. Don't have to do anything special to use them. There's a post array. And because my form is posting this data, I could use the post array and correctly extract that. So let's start with that. All PHP variables start with a $sign. These super globals include an underscore post, I believe. Just quick double check here. $_post. So now when I do that print R, that basically says take whatever has been sent to you as a post and display it. So I'm going to save that and then refresh this page, and I'll get the warning saying when you do that, you get a warning. Most of the browsers will do this, saying that the data that was sent to this page is no longer valid. Do you want to refresh it? So I would say yes, resend the data. Okay. And now there's your results here. Let's see if I can make that just a smidge larger. There's the results of the print_r command. It's telling me that I have an array. And this is basically like a dictionary in Swift. It is an associative array, meaning that we don't have numbers for our array indexes, we have names. Notice the name, item name. That's the name specified in the form. This is the value that's in that field. Here's the name of the object. Here's the value that's in the field. I didn't have it display the word array. I didn't have it put the square brackets in here. The equal arrows, all that stuff is done automatically by print_r. Now, if I mess that up and say, give me the get array, I get an empty array because my form sends the data as post. So now let's flip gears here and go back to the results array. Oops, and same thing, if I put a get here, these two have to match. Okay. The form says I'm sending it as get, as a method. The other form, then the receiving form, then has to accept it that way. So I'm going to save that and try again. Still didn't get it. I might have to go back. Yep. And refresh this page. Okay. And then show the total weight again. And there's my get array. Okay. So they do have to match. But one other thing to recognize. Notice what's in, and I know I can't zoom in here, so you'll have to squint, but notice that all of my data, inkjet printer, there's the item name, same thing as here, inkjet printer. Here's an and, that's the way HTML says you have more than one input attached to this. Here's the actual page link, question mark. First item that was sent to this page, second item with the ampersand sent to this page. Weight in pounds is 8. Subsequent item, first one's a question mark, and every item thereafter is separated by @ signs or ampersand, shift 7. But those are also inserted automatically because I submitted the page using get. Sometimes this is useful. Most of the time it's dangerous, particularly if you've got social security numbers, credit card numbers, anything you don't want displayed for the user. If it's a search page and you want to return, then putting the search information in here may not be such a bad idea. And then this is actually sent to this page. The data has been sent to this page, and I can extract it from here as well on a get. Normally I don't do gets, so I'm going to back up and revert back to post. And then in the results page, we already saw that post works, but I also want to show you the third and my favorite option, and that's the request superglobal array. The request superglobal array contains the contents of get or post, whichever one has data, and it will never be both because there is no way for the primary form to say get post here. Get and post, as far as I know, are the only methods you may put in there. So there's no way to do both. And so what request allows you to do is change your mind later. On the index page, change it to get so that the data is included in the link, and still be able to retrieve the data without modifying your results page. So I always use results or a request array just so I don't have to worry about it. I think we need to save everybody here, back up, I'm on the form, refresh the form, and then once again show the total weight. And once again, there's all my data. Also notice that because my button has a name, it shows up here so I can see which button caused this. That occasionally comes in handy. You might have 1, 2, 3 buttons. Each one does something a little bit different. Submits a different form. You might want to know which button caused this, and then process on the PHP side and the server side, process based on which button was sent. Go ahead.
So I'm guessing a request is slightly more inefficient because it has to figure out which one it is.
I would say slightly, yes.
Okay.
Slightly more, a little less inefficient because it does have to look at both to see which one's there, but we're talking about one if statement. And from a maintenance standpoint, it's probably easier. If you do post, I'm fine with that. I just use get all the time. Now, I also mentioned that if we wanted to, we could spruce this up a little bit, because if you have a large form, this could be very hard to read. And I don't normally use this for anything but testing. Print R, I mean. So the other thing that I occasionally like to do is put pretags around this. Now, these are HTML tags. So I'm putting them outside of the PHP. Pretag says whatever's in here, it's pre-formatted. Don't strip out the spaces. Don't strip out the indentation. Leave everything exactly the way it is. But I believe the pretag also goes to a predefined type font, kind of a monospaced font. So we didn't talk about it in web programming, but it is a tag that you can use. Don't mess with my formatting here. So let's just see the difference. And if I now move that down, or in my pre-tag put in a clear, I'm just going to put a style in there, style equals clear both. That'll prevent the wrapping from happening, I hope. Now it's underneath, and you can see that that's pretty easy to read. Now the downside, where this space comes from, that space comes from this space here. So most often what I will do with a pre-tag here is not put any extra blank lines or anything inside my PHP, and I might even need to put all this on one line, but let's see what happens here. And that didn't do anything, so let's try this real quick. I'm putting everything on one line since it's pre-formatted, and maybe that's where the array is supposed to be. We'll see. So same thing, same output, just a little easier for you and I to read because each one of the fields is on a separate line. That's the only difference. Notice the font has changed. I like that too because it makes it stand out from the rest of my page and I can see that that's test data. Go ahead.
Could you also use comments to get rid of the spacing so your code still looks
Potentially, yeah. But then it clutters it up with comments, but
Well, I was just thinking the block comment started at the end of the first tag and ended at the beginning of the PHP tag.
yep, there are other things you can do. What I normally do, I think I showed you last time, I have a predefined function that inserts the pre-tag, doesn't have any extra junk in it. And so you just say print array, I think is what I call it. I don't have it included here. We'll save that for the next unit. But I include that called print array, which is my name of that function with the array that I want. And what that function does, that utility function, is it inserts the pre-tag without any extra junk and inserts the PHP so that you get a nice clean one of these without having to put the pre-tag in your own page. Just do a PHP function to put that in for us. But that's my preference, is the pre-tag, because it does kind of separate things. So now what I can see is that I have received an array. Which array I can't tell here because I just said print the request array. I could add also in my PHP another little print or echo command to say add the name of the array in it. But that's not my point here. This is not going to stay on the screen. I use this for test purposes and then comment everything out or delete it when I'm done. I tend to comment it out so if I come back to this page later and I want to use it again, I can just plug it back in. But with print array, it's very simple to just call it, and when you're done, pull it. So how do I get at this stuff? A couple of ways. Inside here, here's the item name. I can put in a PHP tag, and now we're using Murak's minimal PHP, right? Because I've got a paragraph tag with a label in it, and a boldface, and a end paragraph. All that stuff's done in HTML. Then in between there, I'm now going to add some PHP to echo my item name. Remember, you can use print. I'm just kind of stuck on echo because it's nice and clean. Seems to work very, very well. And what do I want to echo? One of the elements of my request array. To get to the elements, it's an array like all other languages, all the other curly bracket languages, you use square brackets. And then inside here, the name of the element that you want. And this is another reason to keep this page handy, because now what was the name of it? I think it was item name, but you have to capitalize it properly. That's the correct name. So when you want to use it, you can just come in here and say, give me the element of the array called item name. So it's a relatively quick way to get one element out of that array and plug it into a certain spot. There it is. So now I could bop down here and use that technique for every one of those things. The alternative, and remember this is something that Murak doesn't cover anywhere, it's only in my notes, is to use the extract command. Extract is built into PHP. What it does is takes an array, one of these associative arrays, and extracts it, turns it into variables, where it creates automatically a variable called $item name, automatically creates a variable called $item weight pound, item weight outs, and so on. Automatically creates those variables, and then all we have to do to get to the data that's inside is refer to the variable. So let's see how that works. I'm going to create another PHP tag here. And inside here, issue the extract command on the request array. Again, on this page, while I'm looking at it, it's kind of hard to see what those variable names would be. So that's again why I like the print R. I'm going to get a variable name called item weight pound. I could probably even copy it from here if I was really sensitive and plop that inside here. It's still, this is another very common mistake. I put that in there. Then what happens? Then it simply displays those words, which isn't going to do me any good. So then I add PHP around it, and it'll display the contents of that. Another very common mistake. No, it does not display the contents of that. I do this all the time. I stick the variable inside a PHP tag and say, cool, now I'm ready to test it. Doesn't work. If you don't echo it, it does not get inserted into the HTML at all. You have to echo it. I make that mistake. Keep an eye on me because it's probably going to happen pretty much weekly. Because I get cranking code out as fast as I can. I forget the echo commands and it doesn't echo. And my first thought is, oh no, there's nothing in the variable. Now that I'm looking at it, it's also a dollar sign because all variable names in PHP have dollar signs. So a couple of nice pitfalls there. Here's another one. Forgot my semicolon. Doesn't usually matter, but one of these days you'll forget it. It'll start looking for the rest of the block, won't find it, and you'll have trouble. So my advice is put those semicolons in. So now here's two different ways to access the variable, and you can use them interchangeably. If you have done an extract, you can use either one. Once I do an extract, I don't bother with the request name anymore. It's just a little bit longer. So let's make sure that item has come in. There's my 8 that came from there. And so now I can bring the rest of them in. Item weight ounce goes in here. And this is another technique of mine to save me from forgetting things, is copy that and just change the variable name. So this is item weight ounces. And we also have a number of items. And sample date.
If you had a multi-page form, how would the array handle that? Would it append whatever was in one page?
Multi-page as in how I'm linking from this page to another.
Multi-page form as in you're continuing from one, like you couldn't capture all the data on one page, so you have another page to capture the additional data.
How do you get to that second page is my question.
Just maybe being like a next
Maybe
one.
with another link, right?
Yeah.
What you would have to do is define in this, his question for the recording is, let's say that I have so much data, doesn't fit on one page, or for whatever reason I want to split the data across 2 different pages. The only way to do that is on the first page, the results page here. Create an invisible form with hidden items on it and transfer. So, all right, let's see if I can pull this off here. It has to be inside. I have to create a form someplace. So in here, I'm creating a form, and let's start with this. And this form is going to have a method that's equal to post. I don't think I need to give the form even a name, because what did I do in my other form? I gave it an ID. I don't have any JavaScript here. I do need an action. So there's my form. Inside of here, inside the form, then I would create a hidden field. So that's an input type equals hidden. Name equals sample date. Doesn't have to have the same name as the original, but it sure helps. And then a value equals quotation marks. Thank you. Value equals quotation marks. I want the value of this hidden field to be whatever it was when it came in. Now I'm going to move this form down a little bit. Why did I move it down? To give me access to the extracted variables. And here I can just put in PHP tag to echo the sample date. But I need the quotes, right? Because the syntax of the HTML says the value has to have quotes around it. Now I might change those to apostrophes. But inside here now, I'm putting in a PHP tag. And I'm going to echo, and again, that's my very common mistake, is to not put the word echo in there, because you say value equals this variable, right? Sample date. Makes perfect sense, except it doesn't work. You have to do the echo, and I do that all the time, to leave that out. So now, what's my HTML going to look like for this page? It's going to have a form in it that we can't really see, that has a hidden field called sample date that has the exact same value as this sample date. And so I'm basically just passing that data on, since you asked. A little premature. But how do I know? I need some way for the user now to submit. And so instead of a link to the other form, I might create a button that says date page or whatever. That button then sends me to the other page, which submits this form. So inside here, as part of the form, I'd have a button as well. Or a picture. I think, I don't know HTML-wise whether I can write JavaScript to say, click on this link. I probably could if I gave it a name. If you click on this link, automatically submit the form. You need some way to send this data to the next page. Usually it's a button. And so now my form isn't really invisible anymore, but all it has on it is a button. And you could format the button so that it looks like text or looks like a link, but really it's a button. Harold?
Really, I feel like instead of like a next button, they go
Can
to
you
another
sit up so,
page.
because you were getting blocked by the monitors. Thank you.
Sorry. Really, I feel like instead of a next button to go to another page,
Yep.
you should validate it, submit it to the.
That's coming, the validation, depending on what kind of validation.
I'm just saying that you complete your validation and, save the information on the server, and then you give them more information to add.
Yes. What will happen
Instead of
before?
just moving it from page to page.
Correct. What will happen ultimately, and we're not there yet, but what will happen ultimately is this already has validation. I just don't think I brought any JavaScript in to actually do it. Date format, there it is, waits.js has validation in it. So before I get off of this page, because this has JavaScript, if we went to look at waits.js, I guess I might as well. Okay, this has all the standard stuff in it. Key blurs and validation. I think I wrote all the validation already. Looks like it. Yep, unformatted. The technique may be a little old, but it's all getting done, including validate the form. Okay. So with JavaScript on, I can't even get off this form unless I make the JavaScript validation happy. But what if the user has JavaScript turned off? We will, before we're done, also include the validation on the server side. So here's a bunch of data. And we'll be able to sense whether JavaScript has validated it for us. Because if the JavaScript is validated, why would the server do it? The two validations better be in sync. But if JavaScript hasn't done it because we've got a paranoid user who's turned JavaScript off, or they're using Internet Explorer and they forgot to say, go ahead and let that stuff happen, then the PHP side, the server side, can also validate this. And you're right. If it's not valid, send it back. We'll learn how to do that to the page. Because now remember, we've left the page and we're off there on the server someplace, and now there's errors. Ugh. I How do I go back? How do I send information from the server saying you've got errors on your form? I'm not doing anything with it. It's almost a whole unit because that's not easy to keep track of which errors did you find, send them back, and then modify this page to show those errors that actually got sent from PHP instead of from JavaScript. Much easier to do your validation on the JavaScript side. If you can do that and you can count on your users keeping their JavaScript on. And today, JavaScript vulnerabilities are much less of an issue than they used to be. Who asked that question? Okay, so what we did is just demonstrated this is how I transfer hidden data from one, where'd my form go? Wrong page. Hidden data from one page to another. We learned about those hidden variables, and during web programming, you kind of thought, for what? Here's the main reason. I can share data from one to another and transfer data from one to another page. And then on that next page, we could keep the version number or the page number or whatever and transfer that to the next page and get into this loop where we keep track of where are we going next. And then change it. We can use JavaScript to change the contents of a hidden variable if it has an ID as needed. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We already are. I promise lots of cool techniques coming down the road. So all my stuff should be in here. Let's make sure that works. Saved everything. I refresh that page just in case. Show the total weight. And there's all my stuff. Notice the format of the date's identical to what's up there. But all of this stuff is text. So if we want to manipulate this date, I then have to convert it to a date using the techniques that were in my notes, add some stuff to it, and then spit the new one out over here. So at this point, I'm convinced that all my data has made it. It might be time to take my pre-tag out. Again, the PHP sticks, so I have to comment that out as well. Looks like just the exclamation mark did it. That's interesting.
Actually, I would think any character would break the PHP tag.
That's probably true because it's no longer a PHP tag, so it sees it as regular HTML. Good. That one's kind of easy to see, I guess, to remind yourself to put it back in again. But if you uncomment this one, that one doesn't work. You're right. Good. So now I go back to this page, and I don't need to I need to resend the data. You don't have any choice. If it's a PHP page that receives data, and you refresh it, you have to resend it. The good news is the browsers seem to keep that data a little bit longer. And so now my results are showing up nicely. Now, however, I've got some more stuff to do because I want to know how many total pounds is this. If I got 10 items at 13 or at 8 pounds, 13 ounces, how many total pounds is that? It's not 80 pounds, right? Because there's more pounds buried inside of here. So we got to do a little bit of math, and I'm not 100% prepared for this, but we're going to wing it. So now I want to display my outputs, so I'm going to create some PHP to do all of that. And I'm even going to throw in some documentation, calculate the outputs. I think the first thing I need is a variable to calculate the total ounces. Let's say total ounces in. That's going to be equal to my total pounds that came in, so that was item weight pound. Times 16, because there's 16 ounces in a pound, right? Could make a constant, but that's another one of those never changing, so I probably wouldn't do it. Plus, however many ounces came in. The key thing to recognize here is that I didn't need to do any conversions on this. These are integers. If they're doubles, that's okay. If you got too many decimal places, then maybe you want to format things. But my inputs, I shouldn't have to do anything with. In JavaScript, we had to be careful because if we tried to add inputs, it would concatenate them. Not here because concatenation is a dot.
You need a dollar and ounces.
I'm sorry,
You need a
dollar sign, thank you. So let's just test that real quick. Underneath here, I'm going to put in an echo that my total ounces is, and remember when we're testing, we can embed variables as long as you're using double quotes and echo, I think. There's a whole lot of goofy rules. And maybe a break just to get my test statement to be out of the way of everything else. Otherwise they start smushing together. It really doesn't matter, I'm testing. In PHP, there are so many ways to make mistakes that it's good to test frequently, and it's just a quick little echo statement. So now I've done a quick calculations. I hope that all the math is right here. Now I can do my own math. I have a quantity of 10, so that's 130 ounces, should be 80. I want to say 88 in there someplace. Not quite 90 because this is not 160 ounces. Not quite 90. So somewhere between 80 and 90, probably. I want to remember from last year that it's
8
88.
times 16, not 8 times 10.
Pardon me?
8 times 16.
Yeah.
I know, but it's a quantity of 10.
Which didn't put in quantity.
So what I'm saying, oh, I'm sorry, not 80. We're not calculating. I'm way ahead of myself here. Doing total weight, total pounds. It's not going to be 88. You're right. So 8 times 16, so that's 144, I think, times 10 is 1,400. Plus another 13 or so, so somewhere around 1,400. Let's see what we get.
And we didn't multiply times quantity yet.
Yeah, you didn't do the point.
Okay, you're right.
So it's 8 times 16 plus.
So that's my total ounces in. Good. Total ounces in is save. And that's my results page. Refresh. Total ounces is 141. Does that sound right? 8 times 16 I said was 100 and 8 times 16 for 124, 128, 128, that's right. Plus 13 is 141. Okay, my math's not good, but the program's doing good. Thank you, calculator in the back. All right, then what? Then I want to calculate, so I'm going to just push my echo down. My total ounces is equal to the total ounces in times the quantity, which is the number of items in this case. And then in my echo statement, I'm taking that out. I remember from last time it's 141. No reason you can't leave all these echo statements in and then remove them once you think the page is functioning properly. But I just kind of build it one step at a time. And there's my extra 0 because I multiplied by 10. Everybody with me? Working good so far? Okay. Then the next thing I want to know is the end pound, the end ounces. The end pounds is going to be whatever my total ounces is, divided by 16. And instead of using my echo statement up here, I can put it right in my output because I'm now done with the preliminary calculations. I'm ready to start spitting some stuff out. Again, minimal PHP.
I'll give you a decimal place.
Yeah. Very good. Echo. Don't forget the echo. The end pounds. Now what Harold said that might not have made the recording is that's going to give me a decimal point. Let's verify that. And if I get decimal places by this, again, I'm thinking 88, something like that is what I remember from last year. 88.125, but I don't want the 125, right? I want something like I had up here, 8 pounds, 13 ounces. So how do I get rid of that? Two ways. I could format it, going back to the notes from last time when we're doing output. I can number format value, so that would be whatever, and if you don't put anything else in there, let's try that one first. So I want to do a number underscore format of end pounds. If you don't designate the number of decimal places, you should get 0. There's my 88. Now what I'm not sure of is what would happen if I added, I don't know if I can get this right now with the decimal places. What would happen with number format? I think it rounds. If my number of ounces was over 0.5. You know what I mean? What if it had been 88.675? Would I get 88 or would I get 89? What do you think?
I'm betting it rounds.
Pardon me? I'm betting it rounds because we're formatting our output. Harold?
If you use modulus and then take the
Getting there. That's the ounces.
modulus times 16.
Mhm.
the number.
But what might be a better way to handle this is to typecast it. Instead of formatting it, which will round, typecast it to an integer, which shouldn't. Normally when you typecast to an integer, it truncates.
Wouldn't it be better to typecast it in math line instead, so that you have a whole number,
Which one? Here?
and yeah, 51.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I want integer typecast this thing. Now I don't have a number format down here anymore, so if there's any decimal places left over, they should display. And there aren't, and we're back to 80. Whoops. Undefined function int. Never heard of it. So let's try parentheses around it. Welcome to your first PHP error. It tells you what line it's on, line 51, so it's right here, that command. So if you have errors, it'll tell you about them if it doesn't understand. Now I think I fixed that by putting parentheses around my typecast, and I'm back to 88 again. One thing to recognize. When you have a PHP error, no, watch what happens to the rest of my output. Done. You get to see nothing. No more HTML, no nothing. That whole page stops right there. And that can be really annoying if you can't figure out what the error is. Be nice to see some of the other stuff that was coming underneath here, but can't do it. So that's another thing to recognize. If you have an error, the rest of the page stops displaying. And if timing is wrong, this will happen a little much later in the course. If the timing is wrong, you might have an error and then refresh the page and display some stuff. It doesn't display anything because the error intercepted it. So you can actually get some blank pages. And that's why I like titles, because titles usually aren't dependent on any calculations. My titles don't show up. That means there was some preliminary PHP that we were doing, pre-processing before the page was sent that caused the error. Page never got generated. Okay, so my end pound seems to be okay. Now I want the end ounces, and Harold's already given us the clue to that one. I'm going to take my total ounces, which should be an integer, and mod it by 16 which should give me an integer. And again, once I get one of these working, I tend to steal them. What did I forget? Oops. Sound right? Looks close. So now I can go back and I can tweak my inputs a little bit. Let's make it 12 ounces, show the total weight, and it's going up a little bit. Sounds pretty good. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. The recording is going to be just a smidge long. Usually by now I'd end, but all we have left to do is to calculate the delivery date. So now we're talking some date processing. So I'll have to do a little review on my notes here, but let's get that taken care of and then we'll be done. So I'm going to copy this, paste it in here, and the ordered on is really just the same thing as this date up here, nothing different. And then delivered on, I don't know how I'm going to calculate that, how many days you want for delivery. 7? Well, it doesn't matter, right, because we can play with it. So before I do my output, and maybe I should copy this one more time. New variable called delivery date. And that's the other thing to recognize here is I've been making variables up as I go, right? Don't have to declare them, don't have to var them, don't have to do anything to these variables. Just make sure you type them right, because one typing mistake will cause trouble if I don't capitalize it right. So here I have a capital D. Remind me to try it once with a little d. All right, first thing I need to do is convert my order date, my sample date, into an order date. So I want to typecast it. So let's go back in here, and I don't remember enough about dates. New date time with a string built into it. So this string right here we already have. We don't care about that. If we don't include it, we get at 12 a.m. So we should be able to create a new date time based on the sample date that came in. And that's my order date. I'm converting it from a string to text. Better make sure that works. So I'm going to do a quick echo. Here's the other technique, using a dot just as a review. Just so it doesn't mess up my output too much. So I want to see if that's worked. If that worked, what I expect is some big ugly date time string. The conversion happens automatically. Uh-oh. Object could not be converted to a string. Really? Okay, so if I want to display that string, looks like I'm going to have to format it. And I can format it for R, little r. So that's painful. Make sure it works before I let it sit there for a second. Okay, 23rd, that's the input date with no time attached to it. What's the +1?
Time zone.
Time zone. Why it's +1, I'm not sure. But the good news is it's on the right day. Oh, +1 from what? Greenwich Mean Time. Really? We are? No. Remember, I mentioned this in the notes. Okay. And might as well keep plugging along here. The PHP ini file that you have, PHP ini file, contains the time zone, which is Berlin. And Berlin is 1 hour past Greenwich Mean Time because Greenwich Mean Time is around Iceland someplace, so that's only about 1 hour away. We're probably -5 or 6. Right? And to see that, I would have to do a couple of things that I don't want to do here. Right? And that's shut down Apache, go into the PHP ini file, change it. My notes tell you how to do it. If you haven't done it, I recommend it. I'll do it during the break and maybe tack it on to the recording here real quick while you guys are working on your assignment. But this gives me a clue that I haven't done that yet. I'm not interested in time, so that's okay. But this gives me a clue that if I ever do play with time, I'm going to want to make sure I change that to my current time zone. But I do have my order date, so that's good. My order date is now in a date format. And I'm going to leave that there so I can come back to it when I'm testing later. And now I want to modify it, and I want to say, actually, here's the technique. Notice when we modify these things, we modify them in place. This doesn't say now equals, or where's the addition one here? This doesn't say do equals do modified by 3 weeks. This modifies the variable do in place. So I have two choices here. I can use my clone command and say that the delivery date is equal to a clone of the order date. Did I get that syntactically correct? Clone, 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 yes. So now there are two different variables pointing two different locations. That's one way to do this. But I really don't need my order date, right? That's just a temporary variable. So the other technique would be to just make this delivery date. The delivery date to start with is equal to the sample date. And then modify the delivery date to what you really want it to be. I think S is okay. And now down here for the delivery date, again, I'm going to have to format it. And I think the typical ISO format would be capital Y dash little m dash little d. Just check that real quick. There it is, little m, little d, and I don't want any hours, minutes, and seconds. So that's good. So let's see how it goes. Ten days from the 23rd would be the 33rd. There are 31 days in January, so 31 minus, or 33 minus 31 is 2 days into February. That seems to be right. What if I wanted to make it, can I make it 1 week singular? Still seems to work. 7 days, 1 week. You could say 1 weeks and somebody'd look at you cross-eyed, but it should work. So you got all kinds of flexibility there. For doing date math, I think the date math is a lot easier. It's a lot more intuitive to me than some of the other languages. Because I can modify it to put just about anything in there. Week, weeks. I've never tried a 1.5 weeks. Be brave. I doubt it, honestly. Oh, really? That's 4 days. No, that's 1.5 weeks, whatever that is. What's a half a week? 3 days?
That's
10 or
nice
11
month
days.
though.
That's the whole next month. You're right. So that didn't work out quite the way I expected it to, did it? That added 4 days, which is half a week, but also went to a whole month ahead.
That's, the one must mean a month, Evan.
Maybe because we didn't label it. So it was a nice try, but didn't give me what I wanted. Can I do a half a week?
5 days.
I don't know why I'm doing this, but
Because you can.
probably need a 0 or something ahead of it. I would, if I want a half a week, what do you mean? 3 days? 4 days? Put it in as days. So that's date processing. Questions? Should be all you need to do for Unit 2. I'm not going to pause the recording real quick and you can do some other thing. Actually, I'm going to stop the recording. No, I shouldn't need to do that. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to exit XAMPP, exit Apache, modify my PHP ini file, and then start it back up again. So modifying my time zone, I first went to find my PHP ini file. It's in your XAMPP folder, PHP folder, PHP ini. That's in my notes. I just sucked it into Notepad. I did a search, did an F, Control F to find zone, the word zone. That got me here. I changed the Germany, Berlin, or whatever it used to say to America, Chicago. That's also in my notes. And now I'm going to save and close it. But in order for that to take effect, I need to shut down XAMPP. So I'm going into XAMPP. I'm going to stop Apache. That might be enough, but just to be safe, I'm going to go all the way out. I'm going to quit. Launch it again. Probably could have launched it from my portable apps. Now that should reload the PHP command. Minimize that. And then back in here in my results page, put this page back in again, or this command back in again, formatted R to show me the order date. Hopefully that'll be -6 or +7 or whatever the heck it's supposed to be.
It should be delivery date.
Thank you. And I might want that done before I do any modifications on it. -6. So now I know it's working in the right time zone, but let me tell you, time zones can be tricky. It's beyond the scope of this class to deal with time zones. If you're writing an application, a web app that's used globally and it has times involved, whew. There are ways, I believe, to display times. Here's the time zone, Eastern Standard Time, or whatever you want it to be. There are probably ways to go grab that, and when you see the -6 Greenwich Mean Time, actually do the subtraction of -6 hours from the time so that you can see the Greenwich Mean Time. If the user's clock says this, subtract 6 to make it Greenwich Mean Time, but you'd have to figure out the time zone. And manipulating times on a website, that's real challenging. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover in this unit. Let's take a quick look at the assignment. I believe this one is the tip calculator, right? Or actually, no, this is the receipt combined with a tip calculator, where you assume you're a business professional and you're going to a restaurant and we want this to be a web page. You go up there and fill in the tip that you want to give. What's the name of your company? These are inputs. Okay? Some image. These are not inputs, excuse me. Just some company name, some image for your company, a text box to collect a restaurant name. Gonna have to do a little bit of JavaScript, HTML review here. That's part of the process. Okay. Text box to collect the date. Text box to collect how much you're spending on dinner. And then a button to calculate the tip and display a receipt. Just in case, a button to clear the form. Then when the user clicks the calculate tip button, it actually takes them to a page that formats the output like this. Same image and title, dinner reimbursement form, the date they have, so this is just an echo. The restaurant name, that's an echo. The dinner tab, that's an echo. The tip amount that you calculate at 20%. So you could, this doesn't seem to say that we need a place to put in the tip amount or the tip percentage. I'm going to always do 20%. And then the total. Make these line up nice and neat. And then also calculate 2 weeks in the future to remind this person to format or to submit their receipt before the business doesn't allow it anymore. Not a whole lot different what we just did. Questions? Okay, what's left of today is lab. All of Wednesday is lab for you to work on this stuff. And then on Monday next week, we'll start unit 3. 2? 3. Where are we on?
We're on
2. So 3. And if I remember right, unit 3 is MVC. Now the fun starts. This is where things can start getting complicated and you'll be going, why am I doing this? Until we apply it to a very complicated project like the systems project, and then you'll see the value of it.